Just like Christmas. Exciting, isn't it? Ha 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 ha. Look at that. $14 by 6. Hi, and welcome to another steam-powered machine shop. Headed out the door to Canandaigua Steam Show, but I wanted to get these clips together to show them to you. Been working on the planer, got some jobs done in the shop. Had a motorcycle swing arm that had to have the axle slot cut out, enlarged for a bigger axle, and about the only way I could figure out to do it was in the old horizontal milling machine. So we did that. Had some old tractor brake discs to resurface, and on the planer I made a new counter shaft to hold these pulleys that hangs over the top of the planer and carries the forward and reverse belts, and also has the tight loose pulleys to engage and disengage it from the line shaft. And the piece of steel that I had was 2-inch diameter, so I cut down the ends and left the middle the way it was, cut down the ends to the 2 diameters, and rebored the brass bushing in the loose pulley out to fit the larger diameter, and in the process tighten it up. Found several cases where the machine had been overhauled, one thing or other, and a pretty good job done with it, but there was also signs of massive lack of maintenance. You'll see all that, and we'll get going on the video. Thanks a lot. This is really the only machine I had in the shop that would do this job. I could get the swing arm in the vise and reach in there and cut that slot. And you got to be careful with an old milling machine like this, not to get into any kind of a climb milling situation. You got to feed the cutter in the direction that it's rotating, that way, so it won't climb up and pull the work in. The table's got a lot of backlash in it. Really stuck way out far here, but it's working. Just a little bit, maybe 10 thousandths.
Loose on the shaft, especially loose up here on the key. Shit in there. Get a little persuasion. Oh, the keyway's really loose on that. Nothing holding it on. Nothing but gravity. It's a very shallow key. We'll make something to do that. I want to give you a little update on what's been done so far. The feed rack, 42 inches long, was a total success. It's cut down from a stock item that I got from McMaster Car. The fitting here that attaches to this connecting rod, I cut off the old rack and bolted it on. The pinion gear is a stock item. I also got that from McMaster Car. Made a bushing here that evidently broke and fell out. It was nothing there. So very little end play here. This shaft was turned down to no particular diameter, just cleaned up and made round and straight, and then there's brass bushings that were installed on each end of this housing, which brings us to the feed works, and I'll move the camera around to this side. When the carriage changes direction, this friction flips over from one side to the other. And you can see this rack moves up and down a distance that's determined by whatever you set the stroke for here. This pin moves across this dovetail to affect the stroke of this cranker. So then this gear moves this gear, and there's a ratchet mechanism, actually a double ratchet mechanism. This is the screw, the feed screw that runs the tool post back and forth across the cross slide. And there's also a feed rod here, like the feed rod in a lathe. It's keyed the whole length of it, and it engages into a bevel gear out here that will actually run the compound down up and down. So there's two ratchets, this one here and this one here. This one is supposed to be keyed to this shaft and turns the screw. This one is keyed to the feed rod that runs the down feed. And there is a ratchet deal goes in here like this. This one runs one of them, and this one runs the other one. And this is like the mechanical system, feed system, reduced to its simplest form. There is on the back side, there's a couple of dimples drilled in here, and one in the middle, and the same on this one. And there's a coil spring that goes in this hole with a plunger on each end that puts a little pressure against these. So when you flip this over in this direction, that little plunger goes in the little detent hole and tries to hold it over there, so it ratchets it in this direction. And if you flip it over this way, it ratchets it in the other direction. And the same thing over here with the down feed. You just have to make sure you don't have them both engaged at the same time, and you got the one you want engaged. Anyway, these are pretty worn out. And for some reason, most all the holes and shafts are odd size, whatever they happen to make them. And it's undersized for 5/16. So I think if I run a 5/16 reamer in this hole, it will save it to a nice clean 5/16, and then I'll make a shouldered 5/16 bolt here. See, the threads were completely gone off the end of this, so they had just run the nut on and drilled a hole through there and put a cotter pin in it to hold the whole thing. This is a little loose this way, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. I'm going to try it like it is. I can always take it apart and do something with it a little bit later. But I'll show you how this works. I've already had this apart and cleaned the parts up so you can see better what everything looks like. And then this is the ratchet that feeds the down feed rod. And these gears are worn, but they look to be serviceable shape, so I'm gonna run them the way they are for a while. The shaft, it's got a lot of end play in it, but there's a collar on the other end that's not tightened up. The screw itself and the nut has a mild play in it. So that's going to be at least a new Acme threaded nut back here. Luckily, it's a right-hand thread, which makes it a little easier to make. And this up here is the lock, which will lock it where you put it if you're feeding down. This is a new shouldered bolt I made to replace this one, which was worn. The dogs are hardened or harder, and so I reamed the holes slightly to make them round, and then made these shouldered bolts to fit, or this shouldered bolt to fit. Now go on there like that with a lock nut. The hole in here I reamed slightly, so this is kind of
not really a press fit, but a tight fit. The pinion gear on the first drive is pretty loose on the shaft, and as you might be able to see, almost all of it is in the key way on the shaft, not on the gear. This gear could be not worn nearly as much because it's steel, or it could have been replaced or one made for it at one time. It doesn't seem to have much wear on the teeth compared to the other gearing, so it could have been replaced. But anyway, it's got a very shallow keyway, and the key is quite loose in there. So I had to pull the shaft out of here and cut a keyway on the opposite side and make a new key. So to do that, we got to pull drive pulleys off, which I was going to do anyway. This is just a set screwed collar that holds these pulleys on there, but it was a really nice fit. I had to use a pulley to get it off. This is a loose pulley. It's just an idler. The next pulley in is actually the drive pulley that's keyed to the shaft. It does the work. And the outside pulley is the other loose pulley for the other belt. I don't think it matters. Yeah, it does. The inside pulley's got a big extension on the hub, so you can't get that wrong. It's got a machine surface over here on this end, so that can't get mixed up. This is key, so there's got to be a set screw, you'd think, but I don't see one. No set screw. Oh, I put a puller on it. Sorry. Oh, I can't get it with it. Ain't gonna do it. This is one of those deals where if I had about 3 more hands, I could do this pretty good. Got the puller on there, and it's coming off. No damage, no repairs. Key out first. key. Pretty nice fit. That still won't come off. There was just a little bit of a ridge right on the edge. It's really kind of surprising. It's cast iron against cast iron. It's not a babbited bearing. And it's not in too bad a shape. It's the whole shaft. And this is the keyway that's pretty loose. This is part of the shaft. And I believe this one is probably shrunk on, so it can't move sideways at all. This is not going to be an actual gib key setup because this is not tapered, but it fits pretty tight. Okay, the number one shaft is back in. And there's no play at all, laterally or axially at all, which is amazing, but yet it turns really free. So we're ready to put the pulleys back on. Going to try to explain how this little device works. This is the brake mechanism that when the table reverses its direction, this throws over to the other side of its stroke and raises the rack up a set amount. And it has a rotor here that turns on a shaft with the table movement in both directions, and then these are the brake
shoes for it. And you can see it's worn and grooved pretty bad, but it matches the grooves in here and it was working. And this setup has got a dovetailed crank pin that runs in here, and the connecting rod that goes up to the rack that it bumps up and down every time it changes direction. And the stroke can be varied with this screw. It runs in a dovetail here. So if it's in the center, the rack won't move at all. If it's to the outside, it's maximum stroke, and it will shove the rack up the maximum amount. The clever part of this is that this lever fits down in here, and when this whole thing gets thrown over against this pin, the stop pin in this direction, it makes this little tongue move, and it actually wedges the two brake shoes apart and allows it to turn, the rotor to turn fairly freely to the end of its travel on the table. And when it hits the pin at the other end and starts to and this rotor starts to reverse, it grabs it and throws it over in the other direction. Well, this pin runs in here, and it's really worn, and of course the pin is worn too, but these press out. I knocked it out. Hammer. You can see the worn part I'm going to put down, so we got a new surface here on both sides, which should help. And I'm probably going to weld this up a little bit and grind it down. And once I get this thing fine-tuned, we'll probably make a new one of these.
This is a tractor disc brake off an old tractor. I don't know what make it is. But anyway, I have to resurface this. I got 4 of them to do. Some of them are really pitted up and rusted. Pretty straightforward job.
2 to go.
Last one. Take a little more than that. Nice day today.